Hello, hello, hello. Jeff Rose from GoodFinancialSense.com and founder of Alliance Wealth Management. And I want to walk you through some of the 6 common mistakes that I see that retirees make to screw up their retirement. I've been a financial advisor now for 12 years. I'm a certified financial planner. My bread and butter and what I do each and every day is helping people retire successfully. So what does that mean, retire successfully? That means that they can retire when they want, how they want, and not have to worry that they're going to run out of money. I help give them the confidence that they need, clarity that they need, that they can retire. And not saying that my clients don't watch the news, because they do, but I try to help them prevent from just being so stressed out that they're worried that they're going to have to be eating dog food or cat food later on in life. That's what we want to try to prevent. And for if you're approaching retirement now, or maybe you've already retired, you've been retired for a few years, you're still going to get value out of this presentation and some of the stories I'm going to have to share with you. So without further ado, let's take a look at some of the 6 mistakes that retirees make that screw up their retirement. The very first thing that I won't say always see, but I feel like 9.5 times out of 10, what I see is that people don't have a specific goal in mind. So what does that mean? So basically they come to me and say, "Hey Jeff, I want to retire, sometime like when I'm 60 or so." And I'm like, "Okay, and what else? I mean, do you want to retire at age 60? Do you know how much income you need? What do you want to do in retirement?" So they don't have a specific goal in mind. Do you want to retire at a certain age? If you tell me an age, like that's not even half the goal. That's not even really getting started. And you got to have a specific goal. I'm a huge believer in setting goals. I mean, I set goals every single quarter to making sure that I accomplish what I need to accomplish that quarter. And then actually set weekly goals and even daily goals. And that just helps me stay accountable. It helps me know what I'm looking to achieve. And retirement, when I think about the life events that you go through, getting married, having your first kid, buying your first house, retirement is probably one of the biggest life events that you're ever going to have. So you want to make sure that you have a goal. You want to make sure that you have a plan. So what does that really mean? To me, when it comes to retirement planning, to establish a goal, you need to ask yourself these 3 questions. And these three questions are going to be somewhat redundant through the rest of what I have to share today. But I just want to hammer it home because I think they're that important. Number 1, the first question that you need to ask yourself to have your retirement goal is, how much do you need when you retire? How much do you need when you retire? And in large part, I hate this question. Many of my clients hate this question because they're like, "Jeff, how in the heck am I really supposed to know? How am I supposed to know how much I'm going to need to retire? There's so many things going on." And I totally agree with that. I see that. I understand that. But just because you don't know the exact number doesn't mean that you can't start at least thinking about it. Because I have a lot of people that haven't even thought about it. They might have a roundabout number what they need, but they've never actually put a pencil to it. So, how do you actually figure out how much you need to retire? Well, actually, let me give you an example. This is actually just a very recent example that I asked this exact same question to another client, and they were in their early 50s, maybe early to mid 50s, and retirement was still a little bit of ways away for them. So I asked them, "How much do you need to retire?" And they had no idea. So we looked at their income, how much they were making. Now in this case, the wife was a stay-at-home mom and the husband worked. He was making a good salary, about $150 a year or so. And so we knew what your income is. It's like, okay, from there, I learned that he was maxing out his 401k. So he was putting in the 22,000 plus into his 401k. They had 2 kids that were in college and they were paying their tuition 100%. And we estimated that was about $27,000 a year. One of them went to a private school, $27,000 a year that they were paying college tuition. Over and above that, they were putting additional amount into savings. They had no debt. Their house was completely paid off. They only had 1 car, and that was paid off, so they really had no debt. So when we started looking at, how much they were making to how much they actually were putting away or just spending on that and putting away. So, they're putting in the 401k. Once they retire, that won't happen anymore. We're not going to be maxing out a 401k when we're retired and not working. We figured that one of the kids was getting ready to graduate, so that would be $27,000 a year. One was getting ready to graduate. One would be graduated by the time he would retire, in a few years. So that would be income that they wouldn't need. So we figured that roughly they weren't using, about $50,000 to $55,000 of the income he was making. So just off the cuff, we figured if he had 70% of his current income at retirement, then that would give them a decent amount. Now, in their case, they're very frugal, so I think that was probably overshooting what they needed. But what I want to walk you through this conversation that I was having with this client, because it helped us. They didn't know the exact number, but we started with what they were making. What they were making now, we figured how much they actually needed in expenses, the expenses they would have in retirement, and that helped us get a decent idea of how much they were going to need. And if you're looking for like a rough rule of thumb, sometimes a lot of advisors will use, take your current income and take 70% of that, or take 60% of that. And that will give you a rough idea of how much you'll possibly need when you retire. So that's the first question you want to ask yourself. How much do you need when you retire? Another question you want to ask yourself is, how much have you saved? How much do you currently have in savings, in your 401k, in your savings account at the bank, in an investment account, in IRAs? Then we also want to take into consideration, other factors that we may have as far as pension and, Social Security, because the third question you're going to want to know is, will your investments get you enough income to meet your retirement goal? So when we took a look at how much you have saved, it's funny because I know people that they have a 401k, they've got IRAs, they've got their savings account, and if I had them tell me, just off the top of their head, hey, how much do you have total in liquid savings, and including their investments and whatnot, and majority of the time they have no idea, they have no clue. They have a rough idea, but they don't know. And sometimes I have fun with it and I make them guess. And, typically when I make people guess, they're off, tens of thousands of dollars, which, is a significant amount of money that they don't know is there, which is sometimes funny, sometimes it's a little scary. But, add up all your savings. There's tools that we use. We help clients, aggregate all their investments so they do know exactly how much they have. And then to answer the third question of, will your investments get you enough income to meet your retirement goal? Right now, so what we'll do is we'll take a look at what they've saved, what they've invested, how much that's accumulated to be currently. We'll take a look at, what they're currently saving now and guesstimate how much that will increase based on, what they've been saving, what they'll continue to save until the day they retire. And then we'll look at, Social Security, we'll look at pensions, we'll look at any liabilities, any debts that they still may have when they plan to retire. And we just start running some numbers. We just start crunching some numbers and figure, based on how much you have saved, how much you will have saved, and if we start taking a percentage off that each and every year, is that going to get us enough? And it's a really good exercise to go through because it may light the fire underneath your butt to make you realize, dang, I have not saved enough, and if I have any hope of retiring when I think I want to, then I've got to change something now. That could be saving more, spending less, downsizing our home, cutting back some bills, whatever that is. And that's why it's so important to do retirement planning not when you're a year off from retiring. I love this couple, at least they came to me, it was about 10 years. They anticipated about 10 years before they plan on retiring. So that's a good decade, and a lot of changes can be made in a decade to improve the chances of them retiring. Obviously, I would love for people to come even earlier. Those that are meeting with me in their 40s and even 30s, at least to getting the ball rolling. But these are the types of things that you want to ask yourself. So once again, you need to ask yourself, how much do you need to retire? How much do you have saved, and how much will you continue to save until you retire? And then will your investments get you enough income to meet your retirement goal? So we think about wanting to have a goal and wanting to make it better than a general goal. One of the most common types of goals that you hear is called the SMART goal. And what is SMART? What is a SMART goal? What does that stand for? Well, SMART is an acronym. It stands for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time related. Now, once again, that's SMART. S is specific, M is measurable, A is attainable, R is realistic, T is time related. So what does a SMART goal look like when it comes to retiring? Here's an example. I want to retire at age 62 with $750,000 of investable assets that will yield me approximately $45,000 of a year of income, including my pension and Social Security. Now, if someone came to me and sat down in my office and said, hey, what is your goal at retiring? And they spit off something like this, I would literally get up from my desk, walk around, and give them a big bear hug because I love this. I would love for this to happen. Does this happen? In my experience, no, maybe a half a time out of 10. I've had a few people that I've wanted to give a bear hug. I didn't feel like we knew each other well enough for me to do that, so I refrained, but I wanted to. But when that does happen, man, I'm grinning ear to ear because I love it. I love that these people really thought it through. They've planned, and they make my job that much easier. But typically that doesn't happen. So let's break it down a little bit, what this goal is and why it's so good. So first thing we're going to look at, we have specific, measurable, realistic, and also time related. So the time related thing, age 62, they're telling me, boom, I want to retire at 62, not about 60 or maybe after 65. I'm not really sure. They're giving me an actual specific goal. They're also making it specific, measurable, and realistic, $750,000 of investable assets. Now, that's specific. It's measurable. Is it realistic? Depending on when they come to me. If they are 55 years of age and they have $100,000 in their 401k and that's all they have, then that is not realistic. I'll give you one example of a younger client that I met with that he was in his late 30s and he wanted to retire when he was 50. He was making him and his wife, I think they were making between $250,000 and $350,000 a year. They both worked, which were amazing salaries. Unfortunately, whenever I took a look at what they had saved at that point, and I don't have the exact dollar amount, I'm just going to guesstimate. I know I'm within a couple $1,000s when I say this number. They had roughly $18,000 saved total, everything. That was their 401k. They had no IRAs. That was their checking and their savings. Between the two of them, $18,000. And when he told me he wanted to retire at age 50, I'm just like, how is that going to happen? That was not realistic. There was no way, no chance at all that was going to happen. So it has to be realistic. So if this person is going to retire with $750,000 of investable assets, and if they're 55 right now, I better hope they've got at least 500, if not more. So what else are we looking at? What else is specific and measurable and realistic? $45,000 a year of income. So once again, it's specific. They're telling me the dollar amount. It's measurable, how much they need per year, and including their pension, Social Security. It could be very well realistic. So that is the epitome of what a SMART goal is all about. All right, moving on to number 2. What is the second mistake that people make when they screw up their retirement? The second thing is they focus on what they want to make versus what they need to make. And this is a really big one for me. I see a lot of people struggle with this. So they focus on what they want to make versus what they need to make. And I think of one client situation in particular, and this situation actually is I've gone through it several times. But I had a gentleman that, him, husband and wife, we sit down with them and we get all the numbers, and they've got no debt, their house is paid off, they pay for everything in cash, they've got other cash savings, they've got Social Security, and we take a look at all their investments. They've got a sizable portfolio. I mean, they're definitely over the $1 million mark in savings and investable savings. He's at retirement age, so he can already draw Social Security, and he can get all that. And when I start taking a look at, how much they actually need to make, how much they actually need to make from their investable assets, I'm guesstimating that if they could make anywhere between 4 or 5, on the high side, 6% return on their investments, then that would be more than sufficient to get them the retirement income that they need. More than enough. But yet, he was so focused on wanting to make 8, 9, 10, 11, 12% return because that's what the market makes, and that's what he felt he should make. And he was talking to his coworkers that had retired and hearing how much they're making in the stock market. And he just felt he needed to make double-digit return. And that's not just he. I've had several other clients that fall victim to this. And I try to reiterate to them, like, listen, if you're trying to make 10% return, then you have to be willing to lose 30% because the market doesn't always just go up. I mean, that's just not how the market works. And if you're putting yourself in a situation where you're trying to make 10%, it's going to fluctuate. You're going to see a drop. We've seen drops 2008, 2009. We've seen it. We've seen, how the market can move. And it was hard to get it through his quote unquote thick skull that you don't need to make 10% because if you try to make 10% and you lose, then you've just put yourself in financial jeopardy. And anytime you put yourself trying to make more, then you're just putting your money more at risk. By trying to achieve that 4, 5, 6% return, we don't have to take as much risk, so we're not going to see major drops. Hopefully not see major drops along the way. And just to reiterate, how much return your portfolio generates is meaningless and should have really nothing to do with it. How much it makes is meaningless. It all depends on your income need, period. You tell me you need $45,000 a year income, based on the previous example, and then we factor in Social Security and your pension, then that's going to then dictate where and how we need to be invested. Not just because your buddy's making XYZ doesn't mean that you need to be invested in XYZ. So that's a really, really big one that you need to be aware of that will definitely could potentially screw up your retirement. And that's why it's so important to go through the financial planning process to make sure that you don't make any wrong decisions like that. As I mentioned, before, it's just, what's more important is identify how much more you need to make. How much income do you need each month to survive? These are the important factors when it comes to figuring that out. Then we figure, how does that income compare with your other income sources, Social Security, pension? And this is just reiterating why it's so important to have a financial plan. So number 3, moving on. What is the third thing that people do to screw up their retirement? They never review their portfolio. Raise your hand if you're listening to this, if you're watching this, raise your hand if you haven't reviewed your portfolio in the last year, the last 365 days. Guilty. I see you. I see you. I know it. I know they're out there. When is the last time you've actually opened an account statement? When's the last time you actually reviewed what's going on in your 401k? I have clients still to this day do not open the statements that I send them. I scold them for this. I appreciate the fact that they trust me on what I'm doing with their money. But guess what? Just because I'm a good guy doesn't mean you trust me. You need to know what's going on with your investments. You need to understand what's going on, in the markets. And I'm not asking you to take a class on it and be a scholar in the topic, but you need to at least know what's going on with your money each and every month. Just log on real quick, get online access, check, see what's going on. If it's down, don't freak out, but that at least will maybe entice you to shoot your advisor an email and just find out, hey, I see my account's down, just want to see what's going on, and that way they can respond and just kind of give you an update what's going on. And the more you do that, the more informed you're going to be, and it's just going to be a much better result for you down the road. So make sure you review your portfolio. Definitely. You need to know what's going on with your investments. The clients that I was just talking about that came to me that they're their early 50s, they've been doing it on their own. And for the most part, I don't think they've ever reviewed. I asked them what was their strategy based on, their current investments, and they basically were shooting from the hip, just kind of let the chips fall where they may, and that just is not a good strategy. You don't want to tell that to any financial advisor. That just makes our blood boil. Make sure you know what's going on. Review your portfolio. Spend an hour Spend an hour a year reviewing your portfolio. Most people, I wish I had the legitimate stat on this, but I can almost guarantee this is true. Most people will spend more time planning their family vacation than they will planning their retirement. I'm going to say that one more time. Most people will spend more time planning their annual vacation, their annual family vacation, than they will on retirement. I know it's true because I talk to people all the time that spend hardly any time reviewing their investment options, meeting with a financial advisor, and just making sure that what they're doing makes sense. And having that accountability meeting, having that meeting with an advisor just to help you, my gosh, it can help so much to make sure that you're not investing into bad investments and make sure that you're not putting yourself in a financial hole that you could potentially avoid. So make sure that you are reviewing your portfolio on a consistent basis. Technology nowadays, there's so many opportunities to do that. I mean, I'm just seeing places pop up left and right. I've written several blog posts on Personal Capital. It's a free online platform that allows you to review all your portfolio all the time. It even has an app that you can download on your phone that you can review your portfolio. So there's no excuse that you don't know what's going on with your investments. The fourth mistake that people make when it comes to screwing their retirement is they watch way too much CNBC. Way too much CNBC. And I don't mean to pick on CNBC here because you can insert any other major media network and it would suffice. But, so CNBC talks about some future crisis. Just because that happens, does that mean you need to throw out your financial plan out the window and start implementing some risk hedging strategy that Jim Cramer swears by? Absolutely not. I had a chance to be on the news. This was a couple years ago. This is back in 2009. Whenever I believe it was like in March, so it was like one of the worst days we had, and the local news wanted to bring me on just to talk to that. And what I said then, what I'll say now is just because the markets are down, just because CNBC is talking about some world crisis that's going on, has that changed what your financial plan is, what your retirement goal is? And I'd say 10 out of 10 times, no, it hasn't. You're still planning on to retire at a certain age because we've listed our SMART goal. We know how we want to invest because we know how much we approximately are going to need in retirement. So we already have our investment strategy. That is still to remain the same. Just because the market has dropped doesn't mean that is going to change. And in good markets or bad markets, letting the media headlines influence you in your investing strategy is a recipe for disaster. Don't do it. Don't let the media alter the way that you're going to approach, your retirement goals. Your goals have not changed, period. So don't change them just because of the media. I ain't going to let it happen. All right, moving on. Number 5. What is the fifth thing that people do? They overestimate the lifespan of their portfolio. And this just has a lot to do with people are living longer. We know this, with advances in medicine, with people are just living longer. And what that basically means is that their portfolio is going to have to last them that much longer because, we have Social Security that may or may not be there. Obviously, if you're on the verge of retiring, you're probably good. For those that are, the Gen X generation, Gen Y, those younger than I, it's definitely up in the air whether there'll be any Social Security there for us. When I think about overestimating the lifespan of their portfolio, I can think of my oldest client right now. She's on the verge of turning 92, and she worked for Ma Bell, which is now AT&T, and she put in a good, I think, 30 years, at least 30 years, and then she retired. She now draws a pension. She's been drawing a pension since the day that she retired, and she now has actually drawn an income, a pension check, longer than the years that she actually worked. I mean, you talk about, working the system. Financially, she's definitely ahead. So she has been drawing a pension income longer than she actually worked. Now, that's not going to work for most of us because we're not going to have pensions. We're not going to have that. So we have to use our portfolio, our investments, our savings, and to have that stretch us out for retirement. And that's why it's so important to be really mindful of what you're spending your money on in retirement. I see people that when they retire and they have a pension or 401k that they roll over into an IRA, and now they see this really, really large number, like the most they've ever seen, the most they've ever had access to at one time in their entire lives. And I've seen, guys that have had anywhere between $500,000 up to $1 million, if not more, that now they see this big number so that they feel that they can go out and just buy stuff, buy the toys that they have prevented themselves from doing in their working years. So, and I'll give you one specific example. I had a client who retired, had just about $1 million in his IRA that rolled over to me, and he wanted to take that money and wanted to buy a brand new full-size GMC Denali truck. Brand new. And I'm just like, I don't even know what I said initially, but I probably let out a deep sigh. I try to explain to him, like, listen, I go, it's your money, you're the boss, but you do realize this is coming out of a retirement account, that once you pull it out, you're going to have to pay taxes on it. So, this $55,000 or $65,000 truck is really going to cost you $85,000. And that's not really the point of number 5 here. But the point I want to make out is, pulling out $85,000 out of his retirement account, that's a huge, huge hit initially right off the cuff. So now we've got even a smaller amount to last him throughout his retirement years. And he definitely was overestimating, the lifespan of his portfolio by even thinking that he should cash out and buy his brand new truck. I will say that he did buy the truck, which I tried to get him not to, but what I had him do differently was, instead of pulling it out lump sum, I had him just set up a monthly payment plan where he pulled it out of his IRA. So that way he didn't take a huge chunk all in the first year. We're still paying some taxes, but we bettered off that way. I didn't want him to buy the truck, but he was not relenting, so he was going to buy it regardless. So anyway, I wanted to, though. All right, last one, the home stretch, number 6. What is the last thing that people do to screw up their retirement? They don't take the time to check their beneficiaries. So what does that mean? So you have a 401k, you have an IRA, you have annuities, you have life insurance policies. You have all these things. Each of these has the ability to list a beneficiary. So this is where you list your children. Maybe you list a sibling, or you just list somebody as a close friend. But I see a lot of people that don't take the time to fill this out, to double check it. And to check it, it only takes, I say 10 minutes, but dear Lord, I don't know if it even takes that long. You want to check to make sure that it is the way that it's listed. And let me give you a story that really illustrates this. So I had a new client, this was several years ago, that came to my office, and his mom had just passed away, and he was bringing in some money that was part of the inheritance that he wanted to invest. So we were working with that, getting that all set up. And then we just started talking, and he said that, this is actually the smaller of the amount that my mom had. I've got 2 other brothers, that were splitting this in thirds. But there was an annuity that I won't be getting a third of. And however he said it, it definitely raised my curiosity, because I didn't quite understand what he was talking about. So, he was able to elaborate, and this is what I learned. So the mom had a will. She had a will and listed each of her boys as being equal beneficiaries. So each of them was going to get a third of her estate. So she had some investments, she had a house, and she also had an annuity. Now, with an annuity, which you may or may not know, an annuity, you can list your beneficiaries on there. And that's what she did. But instead of listing all 3 brothers on the annuity, she listed her eldest son, who's also the executor of her estate. And she just thought that would be good. Now, you would think that, okay, so there's a will that lists all 3 brothers. The annuity lists the eldest brother, who's the executor of the will. So, you think that he would just split it up, or that it would be split up equally, right? No, it not at all. What happened was that the eldest brother, since he was the oldest and he was the executor of the will, he felt that he was entitled to the entire annuity. And in this case, in the mom's estate case, it was the largest piece of her estate. And if I recall, it was north of $300,000 that was in the annuity. So the brother, instead of splitting it up three ways, he took it all. And just to add insult to injury, the brother ended up taking the money and buying a new airplane with it. I don't know if it was new, but he didn't have one. He bought an airplane with it, and he didn't even have a pilot's license yet. And when the brother was telling me all this information, I mean, I'm like, oh my gosh, are you serious? This is insane. I just can't. For one, I can't believe a brother would do that, knowing that what his mom's wishes were, and him not to follow through in that. I mean, that's just really shady. And then on top of that, if he would have taken the money and maybe invest into a charity, I might give him some grace on that. But no, he didn't. He spent all himself on a toy that he couldn't even play with yet because he didn't have his freaking license. But once again, that's why it was important that if the mom would have reviewed her beneficiaries, if the advisor that she was working with would have prompted her to review her beneficiaries, then that whole situation could have been avoided. Unfortunately, it was not. So you might be asking yourself, are you making some of these mistakes in your retirement? Are you on the verge of retiring and maybe you recognize some of the things that you haven't done? Or are you, do you feel like you need help to make sure that you don't make some of these mistakes that some of these other folks have made? Because trust me, you don't want to make those mistakes, especially the types of mistakes that are completely avoidable, which most of these are. Well, if you feel that you're in that situation, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, one option that you have, and this is something that we're offering. Here with my firm, this is something a little bit new that we're offering. We're calling it the Financial Success Blueprint, and basically all it is, it's a financial plan that we take a look at your situation. We're going to help you identify what you have saved. We'll give you probably a bird's eye view of all your investments into one place and how those are working together. Most people don't really see that. They have their 401k, they got their IRAs, but they never actually look at them together. And we've got tools now that can make sure that all your investments are working together, that there is no overlap, that they're not maybe taking some return away because maybe you're overly invested in one stock, amongst all your mutual funds, just too much into one thing. And that's what we can do. And we help identify what you've got saved. And then we'll take a look at what your income needs are. And if you don't know what that is, we will help you articulate so that you'll understand how much you need. And just approaching retirement, you're going to have confidence and clarity in moving forward and make sure that you can actually retire successfully. And many people are looking for this. So what is this all about? What does this mean? Well, how this works is our financial success blueprint is $600, but we do not charge you up front. We do not charge you until we actually deliver the final product, the final financial plan. And if it satisfies what you're hoping to get out of the process, that's then when we'll invoice you. If you feel that the plan was inefficient and feel like it didn't give you the clarity, confidence you needed to move forward in your retirement situation, then guess what? We don't charge you, period. That's how it works. And this is something I just love helping people moving forward and being confident in their financial situation, and that's what the Financial Success Blueprint is all about. So just want to shed a quick intro on that. This is something that we're testing out right now. And if you are interested in the whole process itself, you can find more at financialsuccessblueprint.com, and you can learn more about our process there. I appreciate the time you've taken to either listen or watch this presentation on the 6 mistakes that retirees make when it comes to their retirement. Please do not be a statistic. Do not be one of these that does screw up their retirement. It can be avoidable. I appreciate you, the GFC community. If you got any more questions, you know where to find me. goodfinancialsense.com, and also find out more on the Financial Success Blueprint at financialsuccessblueprint.com. Until next time, take care.